Welcome to our comprehensive guide on voluntary exit after an overstay in the United States. In this video, we will walk step by step through what happens when you leave, why the process is typically uneventful, and the serious consequence of the 10-year bar that applies after long overstays. We will also cover logistics, family considerations, strategic choices around formal versus informal self-deportation, and the high-risk alternative of trying to legalize status while remaining in the country. Finally, we will include quizzes to check your understanding and a practical summary. Let's begin. Here is our roadmap. First, we will define overstay and clarify the reality of exiting the United States. Next, we will discuss logistics, airport expectations, and the 10-year bar. Then, we will compare formal and informal self-deportation. After that, we will talk about traveling with family and the risks of attempting to legalize status while still present. We will visualize your choices with diagrams and timelines, test your knowledge with short quizzes, and conclude with key takeaways and resources. This content is for educational purposes and does not constitute legal advice. Everyone's situation is unique, and immigration outcomes depend on individual history, documentation, and current policies. Before making decisions, especially if you hope to return to the United States in the future, consult an experienced immigration attorney. Let's define the basics. An overstay occurs when you remain beyond the period you were authorized to stay, such as after entering with Visa Waiver Program, or ESTA. If you overstayed substantially, you likely accrued unlawful presence. A critical point is that leaving after a long overstay formalizes certain reentry bars. Specifically, an overstay of 1 year or more generally triggers a 10-year bar upon departure. Therefore, while exit is usually straightforward, the long-term immigration consequences can be severe. It is helpful to maintain records of your travel history and your actual date of exit for your own documentation. In summary, overstay means past your authorized time, unlawful presence accrues toward bars, and departure is when those bars typically begin. Here is the practical reality. The United States does not operate a traditional exit immigration checkpoint. Instead, Customs and Border Protection monitors airline manifests and recognizes your travel through digital records. If you are self-deporting and have no serious felony issues, outstanding criminal warrants, or ongoing criminal litigation, departure is typically allowed without detention. However, it is possible to be briefly taken aside for administrative processing. If that causes you to miss your flight, officials typically arrange to place you on the next available one. Choosing an early morning flight can provide a helpful buffer. Overall, the system generally encourages voluntary departures because they save the government significant resources compared to formal removal proceedings. To reduce stress, prepare with a clear checklist. Book an early morning flight to allow for any unexpected delays. Carry valid passports for all travelers, including dependents. Keep printed itineraries, confirmations, and contact numbers available. Bring proof of residence in your destination country if you have it. If you want additional reassurance that the government notes your exit, consider a formal self-deport notification. Confirm entry rules and residency requirements for your home country for all traveling parties. Keep medications and important documents in your carry-on. If you think you may wish to return to the United States someday, consult an immigration attorney before leaving to understand options and potential waivers. At the airport, check-in typically proceeds as usual. The airline sends your details to CBP systems. If your record is flagged, you may be briefly taken aside for administrative processing. Remain calm and cooperative. The most common inconvenience is missing your scheduled flight. In that event, officials generally rebook you on the next available departure. Family separation is very unlikely when all required travel documents are in order, especially for minor children. Keep your documents readily accessible and follow instructions from airline agents and any officials involved. Here are common unlawful presence thresholds. Less than 180 days of unlawful presence does not trigger the 3 or 10-year bars upon departure, though other grounds may still apply. Between 180 and 364 days of unlawful presence generally triggers a 3-year bar upon departure. Accruing 365 or more days of unlawful presence generally triggers a 10-year bar upon departure. Overcoming these bars typically requires meeting strict waiver standards, often involving a showing of extreme hardship to qualifying relatives. Because these determinations are complex, legal advice is strongly recommended. Let's compare informal and formal self-deportation. Informal departure involves purchasing a ticket and leaving without a special appointment. The exit is recorded through airline and CBP systems and is typically the fastest and simplest approach. Formal self-deportation involves notifying immigration authorities in advance and may include meeting an officer at the airport to receive official documentation acknowledging the reentry bar. This approach can add coordination time but provides a clear government record of your departure and consequences. Both routes will trigger any applicable bars upon departure. When traveling with dependents, ensure that everyone has valid passports and any necessary supporting documents, such as birth certificates or custody records. If one parent is not traveling, a notarized parental consent letter can prevent complications. Maintain copies of return or onward travel plans and your destination address. Confirm entry and residence requirements for your home country in advance. If continuity of medical care or schooling is important, carry relevant records to facilitate transitions after arrival. Some individuals possess a potential path to lawful status, for example through marriage to a U.S. citizen. However, filing for benefits while unlawfully present reveals your location to the government, increasing scrutiny. This creates a risk scenario in which your application processing timeline competes with the possibility of receiving a notice to appear for removal proceedings. Results are highly fact-specific and variable. Therefore, professional legal counsel is crucial before pursuing this path, especially if you have accrued significant unlawful presence. This timeline illustrates key checkpoints on departure day. First, you check in, and the airline transmits your data to CBP. Next, you go through TSA security screening. If your record is flagged, you might experience a brief paperwork step. Then, you proceed to boarding, or are rebooked if delays occur. Once the plane departs, your exit formalizes any applicable reentry bar, such as the 10-year bar, for 1 year or more of unlawful presence. Finally, upon arrival in your home country, keep copies of travel records for your files. Quiz time. The question is, true or false? The United States operates a traditional exit immigration checkpoint where officers stamp you out at departure. Option A is true. Option B is false. You may pause the video now to consider your answer. We will discuss the correct answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is false. The United States does not have a traditional exit immigration checkpoint. Instead, CBP confirms departures through airline-generated passenger data and other systems. Second quiz. The question is, what typically happens when you depart after more than 1 year of unlawful presence? Option A says nothing changes. Option B says a warning is added but there is no formal consequence. Option C says a 10-year reentry bar is triggered upon departure. Option D says you are always detained and removed by force. You may pause the video now to think about your answer. We will discuss it in the next section. The correct answer is that a 10-year reentry bar is triggered upon departure after more than 1 year of unlawful presence. Overcoming this bar generally requires a waiver, often based on extreme hardship to a qualifying relative, and professional legal guidance is recommended. These are the main points to remember. First, there is no traditional exit control in the United States. CBP verifies departures via airline data. Second, departure after at least 1 year of unlawful presence typically triggers a 10-year bar. Third, planning an early flight and organizing your documents help reduce stress. Fourth, formal self-deportation can provide explicit documentation but is not required. Fifth, family separation is unlikely when documents are in order. Finally, attempting to legalize while present carries substantial risk and should be evaluated with an attorney. Here is a quick decision-oriented recap in Markdown format. If you intend to return in the future, consult an immigration attorney prior to departure to explore waiver options. If you do not plan to return, focus on safe and orderly departure and resettlement. When traveling with family, carry passports, consent letters if needed, custody documents, and school or health records. Expect no exit booth. Instead, there may be brief paperwork if flagged, followed by boarding or rebooking. Most importantly, remember that departure often formalizes certain bars, so plan accordingly. To summarize, exiting the United States after an overstay is usually straightforward because CBP verifies departures digitally. Plan your logistics carefully to reduce stress, and remember that departure after long unlawful presence generally formalizes a reentry bar. often the 10-year bar. A formal self-deport notice is optional but can provide clearer documentation. If you think you may want to return to the United States within the bar period, consult an immigration attorney before leaving to evaluate waiver options and strategy. Thank you for watching. If this video was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Share your questions or experiences in the comments. Your insights may help others in similar circumstances.